Hello, and welcome to this webinar, Go Digital, How to Streamline Your Quality and ERP Processes, brought to you by HiQA and ProShop ERP. I am Lisa Sterling, your host and moderator for today's session. In this session, you will learn why going digital for your ERP and quality processes can dramatically improve efficiencies for your shop. What you will see today includes digital routings and job travelers, digital inspection plans, digital inspection data entry, and more. Before we get started though, I would like to mention just a couple of housekeeping items. We invite you to ask questions throughout the presentation by typing in your Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, as your phone is muted during the session. We will address the questions received at the end of the presentation. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available in a few days for playback. I would now like to introduce you to our presenters. First, we will have Brian Anderson, Technical Advisor at ProShop ERP, followed by Chris Mendocino, Vice President of Product for HiQA. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Brian.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today and that you're happy, healthy, and safe. My name is Brian. Thank you for the introduction, Lisa. And I'm going to spend some time talking about the ProShop digital environment and what ProShop is, what we do, and how we kind of came about. We'll start with a little bit of history of how ProShop came into being. So ProShop was actually founded right in a machining company. The original machining company was founded in 1997, very small. And as a small company, we were using QuickBooks and Excel to kind of manage our business, do what we needed to do to get any work in the door, get work through the company and back out again. Of course, as we grew, we realized that Excel was really not going to cut it to continue to meet the demands that we had internally, meet all the different needs that we had, and of course, our customer needs as well. So in 2000, we hired a web developer and started developing ProShop. Now with ProShop, as we were developing it based on what our needs were and what our clients' needs were, we incorporated all the different tools that we needed to run the business, to be successful and be efficient right into the software. And that included everything that we will be seeing today with the quality system, tracking time, purchasing, etc. With ProShop, we saw some very strong growth in the machining company. We eventually grew to be a full service manufacturing company doing contract assembly, engineering services, to name just a few. And again, all of that was supported with the tools that we developed right within the system. In 2008, we had an employee that worked for us. He actually worked for us over the weekend. He was moonlighting, and his main job was at one of our largest customers. And when he came in, he would come in and run machines over the weekend, and he used the ProShop system. He went back to his main employer and said, "Hey, we need a better system. What we are doing now is just not cutting it. Let's take a look at ProShop." So they approached us and asked us to implement ProShop in their company. Of course, at first, that was kind of a strange request, being a machine shop. We weren't a software company at the time. And we were really unsure about that, but we went ahead and we helped them implement ProShop in their company. And they saw such dramatic improvement in their efficiencies and their on-time delivery, reduction in overhead, increases in general throughput, that at that point, the founders kind of took a serious look at the software and really decided to move ahead and make this something that is more scalable for the wider audience. And with that, they sold the machining company in 2014, spun off ProShop as a software company, and we've been continuing to develop it and grow it ever since. So what we're talking about today is ProShop in the digital world. Now, a lot of companies, they will be using very traditional sort of legacy type systems to manage all the different aspects of their company. Oftentimes, they're going to use several different systems. So when we think about things like estimating and quoting and project management, doing scheduling, tracking equipment, or any parts of the quality system, all of those things are very often disconnected. Some are very paper driven. And in ProShop, we tried to bring all of those things into one environment that you can control everything and see everything, again, in a digital place where you don't have to worry about handing folders off from one person to the next. As we go through today, we'll talk about a lot of the different areas that ProShop has been built and is designed to help you. I like to say that ProShop does everything kind of from the front door to the back door. We will start in estimating and quoting. We're going to understand what does it look like to bring a project in. Are you quoting a single product? Are you quoting an assembly? Or are you quoting a massive project with many different parts and components? What does that look like? How detailed do you want to get with your estimates? Do you want to go in and do a pre-plan, or are you just going to be doing pricing? Do you care about your out-of-pockets? What are your labor rates? All of those things are going to be built into the estimating side of things when you build an estimate record. And then, of course, we can quote those with the terms and conditions right to our customers. When we win the job, we need to be aware of many different things that are happening. And with that, we've built the tools to keep track of those things. So something like contract review, we understand all the different areas that need to be done at the beginning of a project before we proceed into manufacturing to make sure that that job's going to be attainable, that the job can be done and it can be done on time, that we can meet all the customers' needs and requirements, that we know that we're going to have a good chance of making money at it. A big part of what we want to do in manufacturing is simply have a good plan. If we have a good plan, then the likelihood that we can execute that plan and stay on track is very, very high. ProShop incorporates a lot of different tools like what we're seeing here, a pre-processing checklist, to be able to do that and know that those things are done before they're released for manufacturing. When you're thinking about your supply chain, we want to know, what do you need? Again, thinking about a plan. Do you know that you have everything that you need to execute the job? Are you going to end up having to overnight tooling or even raw materials? What about your external process, your heat treat or paint or anodize? Are those things under control? Are they planned out in a way that you know that you actually can execute that plan internally, and then of course externally if you're talking about any suppliers, and that everything is going to be done in the right order? So again, ProShop has a lot of tools in place to make sure that we can track those things and see at any given point in time what the status of those items might be. What we need to provide some visibility. So we need to know what the targets are. We call those targets in ProShop. A lot of people refer to those as schedules or just any sort of quantifying time and cost. When we think about what a targeted time is, how much time is it going to take to set up a project on a machine tool? If it's an assembly, what does it take to set up an assembly station, or even a series of stations along the way? Sometimes you're going to have multiple devices, or multiple operations and steps that need to happen in multiple areas. So all of those things can be targeted. We can understand individual cycles, total time per part, or total time per project, and be able to use that in our scheduling. We'll take a little bit of a closer look at scheduling a little bit later on. We need to be able to monitor the jobs in real time. Are we actually on track? So we've already talked about having a schedule, right? Do we know that our targeted time is actually going to meet what we need? And if it does, then we will know that we're on track. And if it doesn't, how are we going to be notified? ProShop has built-in notifications. It's one of the things about being in a digital environment that is really, really powerful. In a paper system, if somebody logs some time and they go over budget, they know that it's supposed to be 10 parts an hour and they're only making 8. Well, if it's a paper-based system, somebody has to write that down. Then somebody has to report that to someone else. And then that person needs to take that information and try to do something with it. In ProShop, as soon as somebody logs out of a production run, they enter the quantity or the progress of whatever it is they're working on. It doesn't actually have to be a quantity. It could be a percentage of setup information or even a percentage of inspection. But they enter in their progress And if it's not on track, it's going to notify a supervisor right away. It'll notify a project manager when something isn't where it needs to be. So it's a very powerful way to utilize a digital environment to make sure that everybody knows what's happening at the right point in time, and you have an opportunity to do something about it. And you don't have a huge lag time associated with that. Scheduling, and we were just mentioning this. Now, with scheduling, again, once you know the targets, we want to have some sort of visual way to schedule. Now, ProShop has a couple of different ways that we do this. If we're talking about a value-added resource, something like a machine tool or an assembly area or something like that, we're going to be able to look at Gantt charts. These are going to be areas where we can see in a very, very quick and visual way what jobs are at risk, what jobs are on time, maybe what opportunity we have when something is running a little early. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this either, because again, in a digital environment, we can take advantage of the information that we already know. If it's a brand new project and it's been through estimating and it was estimated to have a 2-hour setup on a single machine and a 20-minute cycle, well, we know how many parts are needed for the work order. We know all of that time. So ProShop just automatically generates a schedule. Someone can then prioritize it, usually your chief scheduler, and people will execute their jobs along the way. And again, at any point in time, we'll be able to see the real status of what's happening based on all of that information that's been entered and based on the information that people are tracking in real time. You'll also be able to know what do people need to work on. So these schedules are easy to display in different ways for different people or different departments. So if we're talking about somebody that is working in, we'll use this example here in a milling area where somebody needs to come in, maybe they're going to run 1 or 2 or 3 machines today. They can have a scaled view of their schedule and look at what is happening within this time frame. They can know what jobs are active. They can know what jobs are at risk, what's coming up next, all at a quick glance. Everything is very visual and really have a clear idea of what to do there. Now, the schedules are one way that we do that. We also have dashboards. There are going to be areas in ProShop that, or in any manufacturing company that don't make sense to have a Gantt chart view. Things like shipping or inspection, or sometimes deburr. Things that aren't such a linear progress, or maybe you have multiple people working in a department like that. I'll use inspection as sort of my example. When we have inspection, it's likely that more people, that you'll have multiple resources that feed into the inspection department. So if you're a small machine shop and you have, let's say, 10 machines and 1 inspection department, then the inspection department will have 10x the number of jobs feeding into it. And oftentimes what that means is simply that you'll have 10x the volume on a Gantt chart, which is pretty quickly a lot of overhead to manage. And then you can further complicate that by saying you have 2 inspectors. So now you have 2 people working on something or working on a single schedule at the same time. So trying to manage that, it's usually a losing battle. It's going to take a lot of time. It can be done, but it's going to take a lot of time to do it. So instead, we'll have dashboard views that we can look at that are auto-populated without having to have a full Gantt chart in place. And those exist automatically in ProShop for the myriad of the most common choices, like I said, inspection and shipping and deburr and that kind of thing. And of course, at any point, if you want to turn on a Gantt chart, you have the option to do so. You're never locked into one way of doing things. We want to move into understanding information about jobs. How do I know when I'm on the machining floor, how do I know what I'm working on and what tools are required, what fixtures are required? All of that needs to be available for me. So when we talk about things like programmers and project managers, they can enter the data right in. We see we've got a full digital tool library. ProShop is actually, because we built it in a machine shop, we have an area that we can track actual machine tools, consumable items, know exactly what we're going to use, and the specific detailed information for those items is just a click away. So whether we're talking about the actual machining tools, inventory items, costs and work orders, hardware items, etc., all of those things, can actually be linked right together. And again, available within a few clicks. With this does include inventory. So when we want to track items, things like tooling or off-the-shelf items, etc., all of those things can actually be included right in ProShop. Now, I say inventory. One of the unique things about ProShop is inventory is actually an option. It's never a requirement. So if you're working on projects that it's a single project, maybe it's going to be a one-time run, you don't actually have to create inventory tables for all of this. You can just buy the product that you need, raw material, tooling, etc., right to the job that you're running. Everything is costed automatically to that job. There's no inventory that you need to worry about. It's allocated. If you're talking about materials and certifications, all of those are automatically loaded and connected right to that job without ever having to think about it. So you'll have options in terms of whether or not you would want to have inventory, but we believe that having both options is the most powerful way to do this. We're going to include items such as equipment, maintenance, and calibration. So this is an example of a maintenance page. I have a machine, it has to be maintained. We need to know who needs to maintain it. When is something overdue for a check? It could be something as simple as a filter or replacing oils, or it could be something more complex, an annual maintenance scheme where we have to tear down the machine and do a thorough clean or a thorough inspection. All of that can be logged right in the system. It will automatically notify the appropriate person responsible for the check at the point of time when that expires and is ready for another check. These things will also be able to be utilized in calibration. So we can keep track of our inspection tools, know when things have been calibrated, when they were last calibrated, and track. Every item will have a full log within it. So if you have calibration documentation, all of that can be linked right into these pages. The quality system in ProShop is built in. In fact, all of the modules are built in ProShop. And we do this because of the way that we integrate everything together. We have the full QMS built right in. So everything from your top level quality manual right down to the quality procedures, tasks, and training, all of that will be controlled right here. It's all digital. Everything has built-in revision control and BIOS. When something happens, if something changes, you change a quality procedure as an example, it will automatically notify the people that are trained on that. Training is built in and associated directly to company positions and therefore employees. So we know who has access to what, we know who's trained on those things, etc. Again, all of that will be built into the system. And this does include the features that's required for Itar and Cmmc compliance or certification. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. That's a big topic. But ProShop, again, it will come with all of the modules and all of the features built in. Now, the quality system, that does include the digital quality control. So we want to be having full inspection plans built in with prints that are at a click away for any individual employee. We have first article inspection as well as in-process inspection. In a few minutes, I'll open up a live version of ProShop and we'll actually see this in action. Non-conformance reporting. So because we have a digital place to keep track of the quality requirements and the first article and in-process inspection, we can check the results against the tolerance. And if something is out of tolerance, it will generate a non-conformance for us. That's all tracked right in the system. It's all linked directly to the project that that NCR was created on. The items for why something happened are all collated for us. So when we do non-conformance reporting, we're not just simply tracking scrap rate. We know exactly which projects they are. Whoops, sorry, let me go back here. We know what projects they're for, what the causes were, or what the individual codes were, who did them, when did they happen, what resources or machine tools were they done on. And we now can take non-conformance reporting and we can put actual value in it. So it's likely that you're already doing non-conformance evaluation every month or every quarter to be able to go through, okay, what are my scrap rates, what was the cost? but we actually can capture a little bit more information so you can drive right down to root cause. No, do I have to do more training for individuals because I see that they're having a constant issue with loading errors or inspection errors, or maybe you have a machine tool that needs maintenance or needs to be replaced. So you can use this data to identify the different things that we're going to be working on and the different things that you need to take action on to prevent these failures in the future. As I mentioned before, we have Cmmc and Itar compliance features built right in. So if you work in the defense industry or you do government-related projects, you're likely coming up against managing your CUI, needing to actually become Cmmc certified, or well, actually when it's possible to actually get audited. ProShop, we have been active on making sure that our system is designed to meet these needs. Everything right from the individual features baked right in, right to the actual hosting. If we talk about hosting in the cloud, what are your options to make sure that you're managing your CUI correctly in the cloud? Or do you need an on-premise server? ProShop is designed to handle all of that. The ProShop software is also exactly the same, regardless of how you choose to have it hosted. So if for some reason you are required to have an on-premise server, that's not a problem. Every feature that we have is exactly the same because it's not a different piece of software. It's exactly the same piece of software. Now with that, I'm not going to dive into a lot more of those details for CMMC, but we certainly have more information online that's available. I'm going to transition over to my live system, and we're going to take a look at some of the features specifically focused around the quality side on the manufacturing floor. This is where a lot of software, management software falls short, is actually serving information into the people that are on the shop floor doing the work, managing what we do. Now, ProShop is a full browser-based system. So again, regardless of being online or on-premise hosted, everybody's going to access the system through a standard browser, which means that every individual, and this is one of the ways that we meet Itar and CMMC requirements, but every individual employee will have their own login. And with that, they can set up bookmarks because it's a browser-based system. They can set up bookmarks to get to pages that relate to them, or they can set up different ways to track the different things that they need to track. So everyone will have some quick and easy ways to individualize the system for them. I'm going to start right in my schedule, and we're going to take a look at sort of a single machine here. So again, at a glance, I can see which projects are going in through this machine, which ones are at risk. Anything that's red on the left is at risk, and I know that I need to take some action to try to get this job on time. I've got the individual work orders and operations all listed. I know exactly what needs to be done here. When I look at this job, I can see that this job should finish sometime right around on Friday before we move to the next job, and it's going to finish on Monday. The color codes here tell me that jobs are ready to go or not. So green, that's the indication that that job has been through planning. It's been through programming. It's been through inspection planning. Everything is ready for the shop floor. If I have a different color, a yellow or a gray or blue, that's just some other indication that it's not ready yet. Maybe it's still in programming, or maybe it's still in inspection planning. And that's actually customizable. You'll get to select how those features are designed and developed. When I want to go into a job, I click the work order, and that takes me right here. Now, again, being a digital system, I don't have a paper folder. Everything that I need to know about this job is going to be available within a few clicks from this main page. So really, a work order is a digital job traveler. These are the things that we are going to be digitizing from a paper-based system. So these are the things that we're going to relate. Now, everything I need to know about the job is up at the top. Now, I'm an administrator, so I get to see things like job valuations. Depending on my license level and the access that I have based on my level of employment, I will have different views. So again, as an administrator, I get to see some information, but this is not something that is usually seen out on the shop floor. So again, you'll get to control all of that based on the individual employees. If I'm a machinist and I know that I need to check my status of my purchasing. Those are all right here, all color coded. I can see the raw material is in stock. When I click on this, it opens up the actual order page. I can see what was actually ordered, when did it arrive, where was it stored, and even open up and check out the material certification. All of that is linked right there, ready for me to go. The tool list, another item that I have in here, I can see that that's yellow. So when I open up my cutting tool list, my programmer has already gone in and loaded in the tool list for me, which, by the way, we have tools and features designed in ProShop to help streamline data entry. So when we think about a tool list, a short tool list like this is not that big of a deal, but if you've got 20 or 30 tools in a single project, it can be quite a bit of time to load those in. So we have ways that we can do things like read G code and really understand what the process is for people in different aspects or different roles within the company to enter data into the system and make that fast and easy. But right here on my tool list, I can see the things that have gone through purchasing and what the status is. I can see that there's one that's not in stock. That's a link right into my purchase order. I know where that item is coming from. And if I mouse over this, I can see my tool right away, and I can actually see that I actually have 3 in the bin. I don't need to worry about this one. That one that's still on order is probably a backup. So I know that even though that shows that it's still on order, I have enough to proceed. Coming back here, things like my G code. ProShop has a file server that it's managing my G code right here for me. So I can get in, I can see exactly where the programmer has put that G code. That's ready to go. The inspection print. ProShop has full revision control on every work order. So when I click on this, this is the inspection print that I'll get. Now, in a moment, I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and Chris is going to talk about how we use HiQA Inspection Manager to balloon tag this print. This is also a really critical way when we think about data entry and think about the streamlining process. Like I said, everybody in the company is going to have different processes that they do. This is a really big one. Now, a print here of, say, 34 dimensions or whatever it is, that wouldn't take too long to manually do. But when you start getting to prints of 100 dimensions, 200, 400, 500 dimensions, that takes a long time. And I know that from personal experience to try to do that manually or even in a software like Adobe. So Inspection Manager makes very quick work of that. And then you can take all of this information and export it right into the ProShop environment. So now when I go down into my manufacturing steps, we can see all of the, just like a paper traveler, everything gets signed off the way that it's going to go. We'll be able to see that as people sign these off, everything is going to be time and date stamped for us because everything is going to be individualized. But when I get into an operation, all of my detail is here. So that includes my inspection. So again, that inspection detail can be generated right out of ProShop, or sorry, right out of HiQA and brought right into ProShop. We can track things like our first article inspection. This is the first article inspection form. I've got an operator column. I've got a QA and inspector column. So I can track different things. We can keep in line right what gauges we're using. So we know these are traced right back to the actual gauge in the equipment module to know exactly which piece of equipment we're using. If I enter something that's out of tolerance, it's calculating that and generating that non-conformance for us. So again, this is where we can track the individual detail about exactly what has happened, who did it, when was it done, what machine was it on, what job does it go to, and all of that's archived and kept right in the system for quick and easy reporting. We can also use this data to, I'm not logged into time tracking. We can use this data to track in-process inspection as well. So this is a simplified form where we're just taking a few dimensions and we're trying to just track a little bit of detail about them. So all of that can be loaded right in. When we want to track setup information, work holding, so all of our fixturing can be loaded in and linked directly into the fixturing module. So we know what fixtures are supposed to be used. We can know our setup notes. We call it a written description. All of the different things that need to be linked together. You can add in movies. We really wanted to be able to quickly add in any of the information that's relevant for somebody doing a job. So if you do a lot of production work, adding this information is very easy. Full step-by-step run descriptions with pictures. This is an area that you can actually use multiple devices. So if I'm on the shop floor and I'm trying to tag pictures at the same time I'm entering data, I can be logged into 2 or 3 or 4 different devices, and that does include mobile devices like tablets and phones. And I can quickly take a picture that'll automatically connect and link right into this page, right from a cell phone or right from a tablet, depending on what you would allow. And again, we have different ways of tracking our time. So we want to know what people are working on, and it's very easy to track time. I can track my setup time, inspection, running. These are the 3 most common categories for tracking time on the machine or on the shop floor. You can track time to whatever you'd like. It's up to you to determine what kinds of categories you want to track. But again, on the manufacturing floor, setup, inspection, and running are the most common. If I log into production running, that preloads all of my data for me. I don't have to think about it. It knows exactly where I am, what resources I'm using, what operations I'm on, and I'm logging in. Now, if I'm doing multiple jobs, I can do that over and over again. Again, even be logged into different devices. And then, of course, when I finish for the day, I would simply adjust my percentage of time spent. And in that way, we're capturing overhead time, we're capturing labor time, machine time, et cetera. All of that is built in. Now, in this case, because this is a production entry, if I come over here, it's going to ask me to update my total quantity. Of course, I can do different things. Maybe I've made 15 pieces today, and I hit go. And if that was the end of my day, I can simply log out and go home. There's additional features, of course, shift tie-ins and so on. But what happens in the background is if we go back to the work order, our work order is automatically updated with the total amount completed. And when I go into the schedule, our schedule will now automatically adjust based on that time that I've put in. So all of these different things add in to streamlining the process that you're doing and making sure that everyone has the data that they need. With that, I want to open this back up and actually hand this over to Chris to talk a little bit more about the HiQA features. We've talked about how this works right with ProShop, but there's a lot more to HiQA that is incredibly valuable. And so I want to hand it over to you, Chris, and you can kind of take it from there.
All right, thanks, Brian. Great overview. I enjoy watching the evolution of you guys' presentations and such over time.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
always fun to see new things. Let's share my screen here. And Brian or Lisa, if one of you want to confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so we're going to do a couple of things today. I want to take a quick step back, just give you a quick introduction to who HiQA is as a company, who we are as a company, and we'll talk about kind of the benefits of having HiQA and ProShop together in your facility. So HiQA is a quality management solution heavily focused on the manufacturing arena. So, I mean, we've been called different things by our customers, but we started out as a ballooning software that had some pretty ambitious goals, and we have grown that system into a full quality management solution with a heavy focus on ballooning, inspection planning, data collection, and also document management and project management, all the way up through like PPAP level project management and such. And so just at a quick glance here, so HiQA was founded in 2006, headquartered in New Jersey, where we made the Inspection Manager product. And so we quickly kind of grew that up, as I had suggested, into even accounting for 3D models, like you can see here on the screen, and our PQP module that we call Production Quality Planning, for kind of that advanced doc management that I had alluded to there with up through PPAP, and even getting into like supply chain integration to share data back and forth with suppliers. We serve a huge variety of industries that are out there, but all highly regulated, all very technical manufacturing industries, such as aerospace. We don't say space on here, but it's becoming its own thing. So you have aviation and then space, automotive, defense, oil and gas, and so on. We've built a highly sophisticated professional services team that is able to work with you on detailed process flow and analysis of how you do quality within your company, and to best guide you on implementations of a system like ours. Okay, so that's a little bit of background on who we are. Just a quick highlight of some of our customers. This isn't something necessarily to brag about, but more so something to say, this is the range of customer profiles that work with us, just so you kind of have a bit of an understanding of that. We work from everyone from 15, 20 person family-owned job shops, all the way up through multinational conglomerates that have a wide variety of ways of implementing our software solutions. Okay. So with that, it's just kind of a quick background. What we want to do is today focus on a particular area of the product that really complements the ProShop solution really well. ProShop has built a phenomenal ERP system, as you guys have just seen. And what we want to do is here, we'll switch over into our product just to walk through that piece that Brian was mentioning there, that having the balloon drawing and having all of your inspection requirements per operation populated into ProShop. That's something that we can add quite a bit of automation and speed to. And so what we do, or the way we do that is, you can come up here, say new from drawing, you pick your PDF. I already did that, so I've got a drawing loaded in here. And so this is my part record. So you can see I'm in this tab here, parts and reports. I've got kind of a ribbon menu of tools. I've got some different views that I can look into depending on what aspects of the part I want to manage. Okay, but what we're going to focus on today is extracting the inspection requirements from this drawing. So this is some very cool technology that we built over a number of years. It's by far the most advanced OCR technology in this space for capturing GD&T from a drawing like this. And so it's something that we're quite proud of. And so in here, just so you kind of have some context for what's going on, there's three main panels to what we're looking at here. So you've got the drawing area itself. So this is all interactive to work with the drawing, right, in a 2D space here. We might have multiple pages like so. So this happens to be just a single page drawing. That's fine. We could say who the customer is. We can say what the part number, the name, which rev we're on. We have rev control for these records. That's something that we can hit on later, depending on how much time we have. We'll establish which units we're in, and we set up tolerance tables, right? So we're saying which tolerances to apply. In this case, I've just got this one default tolerance table, but you can add tolerance tables or clone them based on your needs. So maybe you have a variety of customers that have their standard tolerance tables that need to get applied. Okay, so whether we're in English or metric, these are the tolerances that are going to get applied based on the number of significant digits of any given feature that we recognize. So this is all to automate the detection of the requirements from the drawing. Okay, we also have range tables that could be used, right? So if we go and we look at some of the range tables here, we're saying for different grades of finish, we can have, depending on the size of the feature will have different tolerancing based on that criteria, right? So just different ways to apply tolerances, but for today, we'll just use this default tolerance table, okay? That's fine. Okay, so all we have to do, aside from picking our tolerances, really, and we could even do that after the fact too, if we wanted to, but we can just jump right in here and balloon this part. So I'm gonna select auto ballooning. And we have a few options here. Depends on if you're, you want to spend a little extra processing time looking for surface finish features, right? But if you have no surface finish, then it's a little bit faster, right? Because it can skip over that. Flag notes, same thing. But we can choose to ignore basic dimensions, reference dimensions, general tolerance features, right? So depending on your requirements when you're ballooning the drawing. Okay, so we can do multiple pages all at the same time or select specific pages if we wanted to be particular about it, right? But for this case, we'll just use this default option here and we'll say, okay. All right, so this is gonna process this drawing. What it's doing, it's processing this as an image. Okay, so some people will think that, oh, we're using a PDF, so we know some of the data, because you can embed data into PDFs and such. We're not doing that though. We're just reading the raw image. You could do this with PDF, TIFF, or even JPEG file, which I don't know, not many companies are using JPEGs, but we can do it. And you get what you see here. All right, so I'm gonna pull this table down here a little bit. So let's focus on this piece first. So that's what the auto ballooning is doing first, is it's recognizing all of the dimensional callouts on the drawing, okay? So it looks for GD&T and standard dimensional features like the width or various linear features, diameters and such, and so on, right? So it's recognizing all of those. And that's the kind of the first stage of what it's doing. So that's impressive in and of itself. But then the second piece is it's actually interpreting all of it and populating this table down here below. Okay, so that's the real power of the OCR technology that we're bringing to the table here with this particular tool set. And so you can see here, if we go feature by feature, by the way, these three panels you'll notice are connected. So there's this dim editor over here now that it's switched over to automatically because it knows we're now going to be reviewing the content that was captured. And so I can say dim number 1. All right, great. That's a dim type of flatness. There's my requirement with my upper and lower tolerancing, right? Even the tolerance type, okay? Now, I forgot to put in some rules before the session here, but we could automatically assign gauge categories based on the dimension types. Here, I'll show you that real briefly here. So it's default gauge categories. So see, based on the dim types, I could actually assign and say, well, what kind of, maybe for threads here, we'll use as an example. I could say, I want to use a thread plug gauge, right? So anytime it detects a thread dim type, it'll automatically assign a thread plug gauge as the category. Okay, so we could have done that. And so what we would do is kind of go through and review the part, make sure that everything came in correctly. Obviously, this is a demo print, right? And everybody always asks, well, how does it work on real world prints, right? Well, it really depends on a few things. Depends on the resolution of the drawing. If you've got drawings from, the 1950s or what have you, that are scans of a scan of a scan at this point, with hand-drawn mock-ups, or there's all kinds of things that we've seen out there, right? But our customers work with us regardless of the types of prints that they have, because at the end of the day, even if you can't automatically capture any dimensions of the drawing because it's all hand drawn, it's garbled and such, even if there was no automation that you could apply to it, you can still manually go through, use kind of the scissor tool here and capture dimensions one by one by just dragging a space around, dragging a rectangle around them. And you can use the dim editor to fill in the content. Okay, as soon as you do that, this information is all in the database. So this is a database-driven solution that separates us somewhat from other ballooning products that are out there that are almost all of them are flat file-based solutions for IT people that care about such things. But once it's in the database. This is a part record that you can come back to. You can make modifications if needed, re-upload that to ProShop as needed. And you have rev control over this, as I had mentioned before. So creating a revision, we're kind of short on time for the session here today, but creating a revision is as simple as saying, I want a new part revision. And we can say it's a new, if typically the part number is not going to change, maybe the name, but the rev level will change. And you say what content you want to have copied over, right? So that creates a second record in the database, a duplicate record, and you can make your modifications from there. There's drawing comparison, so you can update the drawing and do an overlay and compare Rev A to Rev B and make modifications to your inspection plan from there, okay? So just to show a couple of things here too, you know, just a couple of quick tools here. This 117, we're capturing this as 3 individual inspection requirements for this particular feature, right? There's 4 instances of it. So in this case, you know, something simple that you might want to do is capture, here, let me make sure I've got a setting on. Let's check it real quick. I do have that setting on, so that's good. Something you might want to do is have a unique dimension to ID each of these 4 holes, right? So I can click this here and say, great, now I've got 4 balloon numbers with unique IDs for each of these holes, right? So super easy way to say, you know, if I want to know if one of these fails, I want to know exactly which one failed, because it's a big difference if this one, if 17_3 fails multiple times, but none of the other ones do. That's a big difference as far as what it speaks to my process. And so really helpful if we can ID those individual instances. And not everyone needs this, right? So if you don't have to break it out that way, but it's an option. The other thing to point out here is capturing the notes and such, right? So if these were notes that we wanted to inspect for, we can quickly capture these. And you see that it brings the text in automatically, okay? So those are specific dim types that we can capture quickly there. Now, the other thing is the way ProShop is set up, and it's very similar to how we set things up as well, is when you perform inspections, it's not just one long list of inspection requirements, it's inspection criteria per operation step. Okay, so you have a routing in ProShop, you have operations, and you want to specify the inspection requirements per operations. You might have, you know, multiple steps. And so creating those inspection requirements per op in our system is as simple as, you know, I can select a group of features and say add an operation out of that. Okay, so now I've just created an op 10. I can modify this as needed to make it correlate to ProShop. So maybe this is op 50 in ProShop. Maybe it's milling, something like that, right? And I can select other features. Maybe I've got some features that are in multiple operations, right? And so I can add these ops like so, and you'll see that some of these features now are associated with multiple ops. Okay, so it kind of multicolors them like that. And so what we're doing here is actually creating unique inspection plans for each of those operations. I just opened up this op 50. So we now have dimension 3, 4, 7, 9 in the op 50 context. These can be completely adjusted or let's say edited to reflect the inspection requirement at this stage of the process. What I mean by that is, let's say, you know, there might be certain features that you're checking at a roughing stage at the machine that you use some handheld inspection equipment for. So you say, okay, well, I need to use some like caliper or something like that to inspect a feature here. But when I check that same feature back on the finished part or at final inspection, then I might throw the part on a CMM or a vision system or something like that and check it that way. So we can vary the gauge categories that we're going to use and even the nominal and tolerancing. So maybe I want slightly tighter tolerance in process stage, at a roughing stage or something, because I know that I'm going to put more stress into the part in future machining ops. And so I want to hold to a tighter tolerance early on, right? Or another example might be, I might need to inspect slightly undersized if I know that a plating operation is coming up afterwards, right? So all that can be handled per operation in the system. And then exporting this and sharing it out to ProShop is as simple as this. I can just come up here, say, I want to create my balloon drawings for my operation pages and pick, which operations you want to export to. Okay. We'll say okay. That opened on my other screen. So now I have my balloon drawing for the finished part, for op 50, for op 60, and so on, right? And so that can be directly uploaded and stored into ProShop against that part record, okay? And then we also want to export the inspection requirements, right? So we have an export to ProShop. It's a CSV that's specifically formatted to match the the criteria on the ProShop side, so it can be directly ingested into their system. And it's formatted in such a way that each of the inspection requirements per operation goes to the right correct operation in the ProShop work order, or actually you do this at the part record stage, right? So that's we're a little bit short on time here. I want to leave enough time for some Q&A as well here, but that is the general gist of kind of what you're doing with HiQA in order to expedite some of the functions that you're trying to perform within ProShop. Okay, and with that, let's switch over to Q&A. So Lisa, I'll let you pick it up from here.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Chris, and also Brian for sharing your expertise with us. Let's go ahead and get started. We've actually had several questions come in the meantime. And again, we encourage you all to continue to ask questions. At the bottom there is a Q&A tab you can type into. So here's our first question. How do you handle standard tolerances for GD&T? For example, a print may not have a flatness callout, but we want to apply a standard tolerance to control the process.
That's a really good question. Yep. So Inspection Manager lets you add custom dimensions as needed. So it doesn't necessarily have to be on the print. Here, I'll pull up my screen here. So you can actually, in the characteristic list down here, you can click add, and you can just add any custom feature that you want to the characteristics here. So yeah, I'll just show it real quick so we can do one extra step that's kind of neat here. Let's say, they were asking for like a flatness call out or something, right? So we'll put in our range here for flatness. Maybe it's for particular datums or what have you, right? All right, so let's say that's our requirement that we want here. So I just built that as a requirement. That's dim number 27 here now, and we can even drag that up onto the print like so. I can do this in kind of a quick and dirty way, just to give you the idea of the tools that are here. So we can drag that right up onto the print. We've got a nice visual right there that's going to be included in our balloon drawing. It's included in our inspection requirements here. We can put it at whatever operation we want to. And we can even like draw a line if we want to say, yeah, it's this surface here or something like that, right? So there are annotation tools to be able to do this. There's other tools in here, but that's kind of like a quick and dirty example to answer the question there.
Okay, great. Here's another one for you, Chris. It says, can we purchase only one module of the HiQA software?
I feel like there's something underlying in that question, but yeah, you can purchase any module of the HiQA software that you'd like. And I'd say, there's certainly multiple ways to work with HiQA and ProShop in the same facility. And so we've got a number of joint customers at this point. We've done a number of webinars like this. We've been partners for several years now. And so we've got a lot of different use cases. It really just depends on what you need in your shop. And, both companies are invested in helping you exceed and be the best at what you can be, and try to help you use our tools as efficiently as possible. So yeah, we can certainly go through in any kind of like one-on-one demos to try to understand the requirements at your facility and how to, bring the best solutions to the table.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Chris. Not every company has the same requirements, and so I think both of our tools offer quite a lot of flexibility to make sure that your requirements can be met, and they may look different than the shop down the street, and so really getting into that level of detail, we can do that certainly with some calls and emails and online demos and that kind of stuff. So it's something more personalized to really get into what that level of detail could mean.
Perfect. Yeah, speaking of that, following the session, we will have our websites up there on the screen for you. So feel free to click those website addresses and request demos on both sites at any time. Okay, here's another question for you. It says, can Inspection Manager export print DIMs in a spreadsheet as opposed to only digital form?
Yes, so that's effectively what's happening here, right? Is so you can export, if you're going to integrate to ProShop, then what you're doing is just exporting the inspection requirements into a CSV to upload them directly into ProShop, and ProShop adjusts them, and you do all of your inspections inside of ProShop, right? Depending on how you're looking to use HiQA, you can also just export to a spreadsheet that's usable on the shop floor. If you're not doing digital inspections quite yet, you need some sort of like a baby step or an interim step to get you where you want to be. That's something fairly typical a lot of our customers do. And there's also, depending on what you need, there's a variety of ways to accommodate digital inspections as well between ProShop and HiQA. Again, it's a matter of kind of working with the consultants on both sides, the implementation specialists, and figuring out what's going to work best in your facility.
Okay, great. Makes sense. Here is another question. It says, in the ProShop HiQA integration, is the in-process inspection happening in HiQA or ProShop? Where are the inspection requirements for operations, features, frequency, gauges, etc., entered and managed? Is the data in the ProShop backend tables or HiQA tables?
So in the example that we are presenting today, what's happening is you have the inspection requirements that are being initiated in HiQA. They are exported out to ProShop, and then everything moves through ProShop from that point forward, right? And so all the in-process inspection, the first articles and such are happening within ProShop on that end in the example that we are giving today.
Okay, here's another question about databases. What type of database does ProShop and HiQA use? Can you migrate job and part data from a legacy PC based SQL database to the cloud?
I'll take the first part of that, or for my side of the response there. So HiQA runs on a SQL database. We don't really care what edition or what version. We'll work with just about anything. We have a number of deployment options. And I forget what you guys run, Brian, but I had one more note on that after you want to give the...
Yeah, ProShop actually doesn't run on a SQL database. It's run on something called Lightning Memory Mapped Database, so LMDB for short. We have a couple of different ways to import legacy data. The most common and what's working right now is a CSV import. So basically, if you have the data and you have it in a CSV file or you have it in an Excel file, we can bring that into many different modules within ProShop, depending on what the information might be. Moving forward, we are doing continual development and testing on the write portion of our API. So right now, the API exists in ProShop to pull information out of it, but to write information in, that's still in development. But that's going to be another option in the future to sync data into it, and that uses the GraphQL language. For those of us that want to know a little bit more, of course, you can reach out directly, and we can look at that.
Yeah, one that actually segues nicely into something that I wanted to bring up. I know we're right at the top of the hour. If this is being recorded for anybody that's got to jump off. You can circle back to the recording we'll send out after the session. But if I could take 2 more minutes just to throw out a concept here. Because ProShop has a new API that has come out recently or is available upon request, is my understanding, Brian?
Right. Yeah. For the, like I said, for the read portion, the write portion is a little bit of a different animal at the moment.
Yep. So so HiQA also has a full-fledged API on our side. And so something that we are looking at in the second half of this year is building several out-of-the-box connectors to integrate with third-party systems. ProShop is one of those systems that we'd like to do that with. And so one of the things that we're looking for is some input from our joint customers that we have who would like to see different scenarios for syncing data back and forth. And so if anyone wants to share that with us, you can, we've got kind of a thank you slide with how to reach out to us in, on the next slide here. But you can reach out to us with any information or requests or suggestions around that. One of the things that we would be looking at doing is, because ProShop has parts and work orders in their system that could potentially be synchronized to HiQA, so you're not having to enter in the part number and the job number information and stuff like that into our system, or the customer information. You can just kick off those parts from ProShop potentially and have them sync in and automatically be ballooned within our system. And so that all you're having to do is go into our product and do some touch-up work to make sure that you're assigning the appropriate gauge categories, that you got all the requirements and operations spelled out correctly, and so on. But yeah, there's some very cool automation things that we can do and that we're looking at over the next several months. So any suggestions that people have, we're happy to hear those, and more than happy, we actually want to hear them. We are asking for them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, and that's really key for us as well, as we look at features that we want to develop, where we want to spend our development time. It's really about meeting the need, and so definitely we love hearing what people's needs are. We love being able to solve those, and then when we don't have the right tools, we love to be able to develop them and build them. And so integrations with systems like HiQA are definitely a big part of that for us.
Great. Well, speaking of tools, let's go ahead and conclude with this one final question, because we are now past the top of the hour. It says, how long will it take to implement the software? And in this case, let's ask the question to both of you.
Okay. Yep. So with ProShop, the typical integration or implementation timeline is about 8 to 12 weeks of training and system integration. That varies a little bit depending on the size of the company, what your specific needs are for the tools that are built into ProShop and how you need them configured. Some of the other considerations will just be, are you coming from a different system? Are you coming from a legacy system? What kind of information do you want to port over? There's a lot of different factors, but I like to generally say that the total implementation time is about 3 months. That's kind of the sweet spot. You're not sort of drinking from the fire hose, so to speak, in terms of information. You're able to parse things out, but also it's not so long that you've forgotten what you learned at day one. And so we build our implementation structure and templates with that kind of 8 to 12 week lead time. And then of course, those are our templates. And then when you sign up, our implementation folks actually customize that training plan with you and then guide you through that entire process.
Yep. And from our perspective, I mean, for the use case that we're going over today, learning the ballooning tools and such within HiQA, you can implement that system in, a couple of days or a week, just to get the training that you need. We have a range of professional service levels for implementation tracks. So it really depends on how deep you're going with the product. But for the use case that we're talking about today, it's a couple hours of training. You got all the ballooning tools under your belt. You can start ballooning drawings and creating inspection plans in a matter of a couple of days, and sharing that out into in with ProShop. One thing I'll note is you can actually implement these products in either order. So you can have ProShop up and running first, or you can have HiQA up and running first while you're trying to get ProShop up and running. It doesn't really matter which one. They can be value added, independent of each other as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you both again for sharing your expertise, and to the audience as well for spending the hour with us. We appreciate your time and hope that you found it valuable. For those of you that we didn't get to your questions, we'll be sure to follow up with you directly. And there were some questions too about pricing, so we will connect with you all as well. Thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.